You're listening to the CIP podcast, the Study Abroadcast, Season 2, Episode 3. I'm your host, Mike, an Education Abroad Advisor with the Center for International Programs. In this show, we explore the world of study abroad, offering advice, insights, and travel stories, bridging perspectives and cultures along the way. On this episode, we'll be speaking with a University Guelph exchange student who knows the ins and outs of preparing for a study abroad program. Let's get right into it. Today on the show, we are pleased to welcome Rihanna. To get started, Rihanna, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show today. So my name is Rihanna. I'm a third-year student at the University of Guelph in Environmental Sciences, and I'm going to be studying abroad in winter of 2022 at Wageningen University in the Netherlands.
That's amazing. I'm sure you're pretty excited after all this time. What initially drew you to the idea of studying abroad, and what steps did you take to start researching your options?
So I think for me, study abroad was something that I was always aware of was an option to do as part of my degree, but I really started getting that itch to actually turn that idea into action around the middle of the pandemic, when I think, like a lot of people, started feeling like travel wasn't as much of a guarantee in life as we had all thought it was, and really wanted to actually make the most of my university experience and get abroad and see the world. So I started looking at options. Initially, I had a little bit of a joke with my mother. She said, "Why don't you go back and connect with your roots in the Netherlands?" And I found out on the program search of the CIP website that Guelph does have a partner with Wageningen University in the Netherlands. So I think the first real step that I did was start talking to my program counselor for what things I would need to consider to make it fit into my degree to go on an exchange program. And once I had narrowed down that, within my schedule of studies at the University of Guelph, the best semester to go would be winter of my third year and things like that, I really started looking into the programs, narrowing down the options with the program filters on the program search website, and decided to pick my top 5 based on a variety of different options, and then wait and see where I got placed. Obviously, with the pandemic, things got shaken up a little bit, but I'm really, really excited to be going abroad and to be going to a place that's a little familiar to me, but also going to push me outside of my comfort zone.
I think that's really interesting that you're able to take advantage of this experience to reconnect with your Dutch heritage, be able to experience the culture of the Netherlands firsthand. For students to get access to the study abroad application, they have to complete the study abroad information session. I know that you've been working on these sessions as a peer helper. Can you explain what the info session is like?
Yeah, I've had the experience of both attending the information session and giving the information sessions. So when I was going through the application process, the information session was just the course link version of the study abroad information session, but for all of our listeners, we also have live presentation sessions where you can get the information session information that's on the course link module delivered to you live and in a short hour-long period. So the information session is a fantastic way to get all of the frequently asked questions about study abroad answered, to learn about what your different options are and the differences between different study abroad options. I'm an exchange student, but there's more study abroad programs than just your typical semester abroad exchange. So on either the course link information session or the live information session, you'll be able to get through all of these materials, discuss some of the myths of studying abroad, discuss some of the things that you're going to need to consider to make study abroad a reality for yourself. I did the course link version, obviously, and that was a great way to work through the material at my own pace and be able to refer back to it later. But if you're worried about time, joining us for the live information session is a fantastic way to get ready for the application process and also to ask us questions as it's coming up. So that's basically the information session.
Sounds good. I know that CIP runs these sessions throughout the fall semester and into early January, so there's lots of opportunities to join a session if you are interested. So I know you mentioned that you started thinking about studying abroad during the pandemic. Academically, when did you start planning to study abroad, and when did you start the process of applying?
That's a really great question, because I know that a lot of upper years will wonder, oh, is it too late for me to study abroad or not? And so for my program, I first started planning for study abroad after some information sessions specific to my program in the beginning of my second year, which involved my program counselor telling us about the timeline that made the most sense for our program. It differs for other majors, obviously, but I got interested in study abroad in sort of the summer after my first year and really started the process of attending the information sessions, doing the research on which programs I was considering in my second year, and I applied in January of my second year in order to be able to consider the study abroad programs that were being offered the summer after second year and throughout my third year. So again, I'm heading off abroad in winter 22, which is the winter of my third year at the University of Guelph. So I started the planning process at least a year and a half before going. And all of our listeners who are considering studying abroad, do make sure that you plan early, but plan around the fact that the applications for study abroad programs are due in January each year, and for the summer through to the following winter of the upcoming year.
Sounds good. So I know that the application process can be fairly simple, and probably the hardest part is deciding where to go and which program to participate in. So what was the application process like for you?
Well, I totally agree with you, Mike, that the hardest part is deciding where to go. And in general, I found my application process, aside from the decision making, was pretty straightforward. The application itself involves submitting your academic information, submitting the list of the programs that you're interested in, and a few other administrative details that CIP needs for the application. Yeah, I think before the applications opened, I was a little bit nervous about how much would be required, but really the bulk of the application is making sure that you list your top 5 programs that you're interested in and list them in the order that you are most interested in. So picking my top 1, 2, and 3 was a very tough decision-making process for me, but at the end of the day, I got a lot of help from the CIP office in making those decisions, and the application is quite simple.
So was the Netherlands your first choice?
Well, it depends on what part of the application process you had asked me in. So initially, pre-COVID, I was going to go very far away, and my first choice was traveling to New Zealand. And then with a back and forth of pandemic challenges, my exchange to New Zealand was no longer an option. So the Netherlands was in my top 5. It was my third choice. I felt that ultimately my top 3 choices were probably equally my first choice, and I just put them as 1, 2, 3 because of the need to do that for the application, because all of the programs that I was considering in my eyes were fantastic options, and I knew that whatever option I would have ended up with would have something really incredible to offer. So I'm really happy that I'm going to the Netherlands, even though initially at one point in time, I thought maybe New Zealand would be more exciting, but there's so many things to offer wherever you go in the world. So
it sounds like the Netherlands may have been the serendipitous choice here.
I think so, yeah. I think so.
I think in the end, it seems as though it's working out in your best interest. So I know that for some students, finding out where they're being placed can be a difficult time. There's a bit of a waiting period. So after you submitted your application, waiting to find out where you were placed can sometimes be the hardest part. Do you have any suggestions for students waiting or keeping an open mind, as you sort of alluded to previously?
Yeah, the waiting period is definitely a challenge because I find that when you're getting ready to submit your application ahead of the deadline, that's when it's really, really exciting because you've just finished up your research and you've got this idea in your head probably of this is what my study abroad is going to be, and it's very exciting. So waiting to find out if you're going to get that placement in whatever your vision is at the time you submitted your application is a challenge because it's a pretty big gap of time between when you submit the application in January and when you find out your acceptance at the end of the semester or close to the end of the winter semester. I found for myself that I got distracted with school in that time period. Obviously the semester gets quite busy between January and around March, so the time does fly by. While you're waiting, I think some of the best things to consider is just, again, for that open-mindedness, remembering that all of your options are going to be fantastic experiences because wherever you go, it's going to be very different from studying at the University of Guelph, and it's going to be a learning experience for you. So I would say, find some distractions from time to time if you find that waiting is getting too difficult. Find some photo albums, keep up with CIP's little promotions that are going on and interesting events about studying abroad to get that itch to know what's happening out of your mind, and the time's really going to fly by. Before you know it, you will have your acceptance and you'll know where you're studying abroad, and that's going to be even more exciting.
So I know as of late you've been doing a lot of work in terms of logistics and planning and trying to prepare for this experience, particularly during these COVID times and the ups and downs of the pandemic. Do you have any final words of wisdom to help students prepare for their time abroad or study abroad application?
I think for the application, my words of wisdom would be to take the time to consider what you want to get out of your study abroad program, what you value the most in your travel experience, because that will help you with your decisions. But I'd also say that it's possible to spend too much time thinking about where you want to go and that sort of thing. At the end of the day, I decided my top 1, 2, and 3 by flipping a coin. So sometimes just say, done enough research, it's time to just take a chance and do it. And I'd say that taking a chance and doing it is one of the best pieces of advice I have for any student considering study abroad. You really have to at one point say, I'm going to take a leap and commit to this. For me, trying to prepare during COVID with a lot of uncertainty around travel, telling myself that you only live once kind of has been a good way to look at preparing even in the face of uncertainty. And while you're trying to prepare either for the application or for the actual going abroad, I think my best piece of advice would be to reach out to people for help, to figure out, what do you need to be doing at what times. There's going to be someone within CIP who can help answer your questions. You're not going to be the only student considering study abroad or getting ready to go abroad. So relying on the people around you to help you out through the process, either for getting ready to travel. I know that I'm going to be relying a lot on my family to help me when it comes to planning what I'm going to pack and things like that. So use the supports that are available, and you'll find that taking the big leap to study abroad will be a lot easier than you think it is.
Those are definitely some great words of wisdom you're right, you only do live once, and you have to take advantage of this time, particularly, I think, as a student. I just wanted to add that the Center for International Programs, as you mentioned, has some great supports for students, whether it's the online pre-departure program Depart Smart. They also offer an in-person Safe Travels Essentials Night, and we try to connect students with past exchange students as well, so they can help answer some of the questions that they have along the way. Well, that's all for today's episode of the Study Abroadcast. Don't forget to explore your own study abroad opportunities on the CIP website, uoguelph.ca/CIP, or follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Our Instagram handle is CIP_Guelph. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Rihanna for sharing her advice, insights, and travel stories. Stay tuned to our next episode where we look to unpack the study abroad experience even further.